Is William Mucker. I'm a client executive with Camaplan, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our presentation with our special guest, Charles Sells, the CEO of the PIP Group. He's going to talk today about tax liens, why not to believe the hype, why it's not as easy as you might think it may be, but the returns can be outstanding. Today's presentation will start off with a little brief 101 on self-directed IRAs, so you know what myself and Camaplan do. And what we specialize at, so you can open up your ears for you personally on Charles' presentation, as well as for your retirement funds. So, no good presentation goes on without a brief disclosure. So this disclosure was put together by some clever attorneys just to let you guys know that we at Camaplan, we're not attorneys, we're not CPAs, we're not investment advisors. So we always suggest that you consult with those necessary professionals. You can bring us in on a conference call. That's also why we do not do any endorsements. Everything that we present is strictly for educational purposes, and that's also why we don't sell anything. So if you're a client of ours, you know we'll never call you up with that shiny new deal. It's all up to you, and we'll help make the transaction go how you need it to be. So to start off the 101. Great question to ask is, what is a self-directed IRA? I speak to a lot of people and they don't know. They think they're going to open up an account that's called a self-directed IRA. So self-directed is just an adjective. All the accounts that you open with us are the same accounts that you would open up at Charles Schwab or Fidelity or anywhere else. We have traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, simple IRAs, SEP IRAs, all that good stuff. And all the same rules apply. Self-directed, again, is just an adjective. It's for people who want to take their funds off of Wall Street and put it into alternative investments. So the only thing that changes with us is rather than stocks, bonds, and ETFs, your IRA will hold real estate and other stuff. And we'll go over exactly what you can invest in. Right now, which is pretty much the biggest question I do get, is what can I do? So the IRS will never tell you what you can do, only what you cannot do. But some of the things that our clients have done and are currently doing every day are what's listed here. We have real estate where your IRA will go out and purchase 123 Main Street or any commercial building, and then collect rent or, you know, the sale of the the profit of the sale of the property. Precious metals, turn your IRA into a mini bank, where your IRA will lend money in the form of a unsecured or secured note, such as a mortgage. Another option is private placements, where you can go out and purchase shares of privately traded companies that aren't on the stock market yet, aren't publicly traded. Before Facebook, Tesla, and Amazon, all of those big companies went public, you wouldn't be able to purchase their shares on the stock market, so you would have to do it in a form of private placement or PPM like this. And then of course, there's other. I've seen people do things as crazy as buy sheep in their IRA and sell the wool. Buy trees and sell the fruit. The options are pretty much endless, and we'll go over some more in the future slides before I pass it over to Charles. So as I said before, all the IRAs with us are self-directed. It'll still be a traditional IRA, Roth IRA, HSA, SEP IRA, and the same investments you can make in your traditional IRA, you can make in your Roth IRA, and vice versa. So you have your tax-deferred accounts and your tax-free accounts. Tax-deferred means, the income you put in there is not taxable until you take a distribution down the line at whatever tax bracket you are down the line, and then tax-free, you've already paid your taxes on it. So everything after that is tax-free. So why we love IRAs and why it's a good thing to invest with your IRAs, you have $100,000 and you have different avenues of investing. What do you get to keep from that $100,000 you earned in these different avenues of investing? So you go out and you invest your time. So you have your W-2 salaries, and you've earned $100,000. With all the taxes, you have your federal, state, Social Security, local, Medicare, your employer tax. That $100,000 at a 40% tax bracket in this example, that dwindles down to $60,000 pretty quickly, just to help Uncle Sam keep the lights on. Then you got your passive investments, where you have your rent, royalties, interest, dividend payments, and all that good stuff. They're at a slightly lower tax bracket, and with these types of investments, or with this type of avenue of income, in this example, it goes down to $75,000, and you still pay $25,000 in tax. Definitely better than $60,000. Then, why people come to us is you have your traditional and tax-deferred IRAs as well as your tax-free IRAs that interest and earnings you make in those accounts are completely tax-free. So that $100,000 is $100,000 cash. The only difference is that asterisk next to the tax-deferred account means you're going to be paying taxes on that when you take it out down the line. So $100,000 is already tax-free in the Roth, cash in your pocket, and the $100,000 in the tax-deferred account, you just have to pay the taxes whenever you're ready to take your distribution. Here's a little visual representation of that. You and 3 friends decided to invest $50,000 through different avenues of investing over 40 years at a 10% rate of return, and you're all at a 30% tax bracket. So your friend who was smart decided to use his tax-free account in the blue. Your cousin decided to use the green tax-deferred account and invest $50,000, and you decided to invest with the purple taxable income. So over 40 years, you can see it's important to note that the blue tax-free account and the green tax-deferred account over those 40 years both earned $2.2 million. However, you can see because you had to take the taxes out, or when you took the money out of the distribution of that $2.2 million, you paid $700,000 in taxes to Uncle Sam. Meanwhile, you only made $700,000 overall after taxes with your taxable income. So hopefully in this example, maybe your friend is nice or your cousin's nice, and they save some money for you and you can go out on a vacation with them. So the big thing with IRAs is, and this is not just self-directed IRAs, this is IRAs everywhere. So that's why, when you open your Schwab account or your brokerage account, they'll ask you if, any of your family members are managers of publicly traded companies. What they're doing is making sure that there is no prohibited transactions going on or can possibly go on. So with IRAs, when you're investing, anybody of lineal ascent or descent from you, including yourself and any entity that those people own 50% or more of, are disqualified from providing a direct benefit to the IRA as well as receiving a direct benefit from the IRA. So that means, you can pick the color of the paint, but your parents, your grandparents, your children, and all of them, they can't pick up a paintbrush and paint the building. Because you're not paying the tax on the income like I mentioned earlier, so they want you to go out and pay somebody who's charging competitive rates that will be paying taxes on that income. So you wouldn't be able to stay in the property, you wouldn't be able to work on the property, but obviously in green you have your aunts, uncles, brothers, nieces and nephews and all that. That's okay. The process is pretty simple. So you just open up an account, like I said, similar to the tax status of the account you're planning on funding it with. This chart looks a little convoluted, but a lot of these steps are behind the scenes, and that's us processing the paperwork. So you got step 1, you just opened your account. Step 2 is you do a transfer or rollover either from an IRA or an employer plan of a similar tax status to the accounts you've opened. Choose your investment. You bring us the supporting docs with our asset purchase directive, a simple 2-page form. We process that within 2 business days. We fund the investment. You'll be able to see that asset in your account. And then you'll be able to get email notifications and see all the interest you earn, and then you basically pretty much rinse and repeat. So I took up a lot of time, so I'll make this brief. Again, my name is William Mucker. If you guys have any questions about self-directed IRAs, you can reach me after this presentation at any time. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if you let me know that you're interested in opening an account, whether it's another account in your current client and you want to open it for your family members or your children to help them get started, or if you're a new client, just let me know you were on this webinar and I'll waive the $50 application fee so you can go ahead and get started investing without worrying about that application fee. Without further ado, I'll give you a little brief introduction of our speaker today. Charles Sells, he's the CEO of the PIP Group. He began his investing career into tax liens at the ripe age of 23. He was enticed by the simplicity and profitability of it. However, after 3 years, he decided that he wanted to kick the pitchman to the curb and start his own business and help other investors do the same thing. He used his experience and his reputable business strategy to help over 1,000 investors over 20 years invest into distressed properties. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Charles. He'll elaborate on himself, and then he can start educating us. So I'm going to give you the hosting abilities, and you'll be able to share your screen, Charles.
All right, let me get it up here. Oh, you are the host now. Okay,
there you go.
There we go. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I will not reintroduce myself, so we'll just jump right into this and get started. As we've seen through social media, dating myself, I used to only be late night infomercials, but we're seeing a lot of hype grow in the social media channels. And as Will pointed out, I got into this business because I didn't like the pitchmen. I essentially worked for one. There's a legitimacy to this business, but what you're getting out there, the information you're getting out there is not very good information. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show 3 different states, 3 different top level, look down on these states and kind of discuss what I'm talking about here. Now, I went a little strong with the last comment on my bullet points here. You can be an individual beginner, a successful tax buyer. It's just really, really hard. It takes years of being involved and being in the trenches of the industry to really be able to make a mark in that industry. But there's also a lot of other reasons, and that's what we're going to discuss as we go through this. We're going to talk about Florida, Georgia, and Illinois. There's 3 very different tax sales, very different structures, and very different rules to how they operate. So we're gonna quickly just discuss what those are. We have a disclaimer of our own, and that is distressed real estate, like tax liens, it's not sexy. If there's a tax lien on a property, odds are that's not the only thing that's being neglected. The property is probably being neglected as well. So that's something to keep in mind, that you're not going to find these, prime, pristine, perfectly manicured properties in anything distressed real estate. It just doesn't exist. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say the hype, because, they put these McMansions up and say that they've bought them for next to nothing. That's not going to happen. So if you can get that idea out of your head, distressed real estate can be very profitable. Now, I've used this slide for a while now, and the reason I use it is because it's very much on the extreme. It is essentially close to being a tear down house. As long as you don't judge a book by the cover, there's profits in anything in distressed real estate. As you can see, this actually was an Illinois tax lien that went through the foreclosure process, and the investor had a total investment of $13,000 into it and sold it in that condition that you see in that picture for $65,000. And we do that every day. I've used a lot of the slides in this presentation through, I built this presentation using other presentations that have these slides. So you may see different fonts and that sort of thing, but this particular one was discussing Illinois tax liens specifically. But we're just talking about hype and top level today. So very quickly, what are tax liens? Reliable and predictable source of revenue for local government. Now, in the news these days, it's just we're in very crazy, uncertain times, but the inevitable is that a lot of people are going to be out of work. There's going to be a lot more volume of tax liens available, and private money like yourselves is what's going to be able to take advantage of this opportunity coming down our pipeline. So the government essentially, your property taxes pay for high schools and elementary schools and fire and police and the EMT services. That all comes from your county level property taxes. If those don't get paid, the county needs that money in order to survive, in order to function properly. So they sell those taxes off to investors like you or like me, and at pretty substantial rates. And that is so they can collect that money quickly and make that investment attractive to tax buyers. There's a certain set of time that the homeowner has to then redeem or pay off those taxes. And as you're going to see, it varies from state to state when we compare these 3 states that we're going to momentarily. So that's essentially it. I mean, it's a pretty simple process overall. The taxes become delinquent, lots of notifications sent to the homeowner, and then if they don't respond, it's advertised for public sale, usually 90 days, and then it goes to auction. They say on the courthouse steps. Well, that is a reality of the situation. In Georgia, you're literally outside the courthouse in the grass bidding on these things. In Illinois, you're in the courthouse sitting at a computer. So this actually is how the process works. So I discussed redemption and the maturation of the liens. That's the amount of time they have to pay off that tax lien and pay you back. I should note that that amount is paid direct to the county, not to you. So that you're not working with the tax buyer. You have the county involved in the middle there. If it doesn't get redeemed, then you have the option to foreclose, and we're going to discuss some definitions here in a second, but it might require a quiet title action. Now, the first question at the end of a presentation on tax liens is always, well, what about the mortgage on the property? A tax lien is a super mortgage. That essentially means that it supersedes a first mortgage. The only thing it's not superseding is an IRS lien. Now, as Will mentioned, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've literally put my hands on hundreds of thousands of tax liens. And yes, I have run across some where the IRS had a lien on there as well. What we have to do in that circumstance, if we're foreclosing, we have to give them a 6 months heads up and a notice that that's happening. And usually they come back to us within 30, 60 days and expunge the lien and say, you know what, we're not after the property, we're after the individual, and that lien is gone. So it's something that is often asked. It is a concern to some level, but I can tell you that we've never had a foreclosure bogged down due to an IRS lien, not one time. So just some terminology as we get ready to get into this, into the nuts and bolts of this. Tax deeds is exactly what it sounds like. You're getting a deed to a property for unpaid taxes. In some states, it's a very easy, simple process. You essentially do a conveyance application and bam, you've got a deed in your hand. It may not be a clean deed, but it's a deed. So then you start a quiet title action process. In other states, it might be as marketable as a warranty deed to your property, i.e. the deed that you have on your home right now. It is guaranteed against anything other than your first mortgage. Other states, again, it can take a considerable amount of red tape to cut through, processes that you have to do that we're going to look at in just a second, and lots and lots and lots of steps that are involved. And that's why, again, we say don't believe the hype. There's a lot to this investment. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? And what they say verbatim is it's the little known secret investors don't want you to know. That's not what it is. So we define tax lien investors into two categories. And now I'm talking about private investors. I'm talking about you guys. Obviously, there's a lot of hedge fund money in the industry as well, but I'm talking about you guys. So we define investors into two categories: redemption investors and property investors. There's a lot of investors out there. All they want to do is kick back and earn those high-yielding redeemed liens. As those liens redeem, they come into CAMA plan, they turn those back around to us, and we go buy more tax liens. And then there's the property investors. They want deeds, they want property, and they want it at a fraction of the value, and they want to acquire it through the tax lien process. And there's great ways to do that, and there's not so great ways to do that. And again, that's what we're here to talk about. Now, these statements I took literally verbatim off of, I'm not even going to call them competitor websites. Let's call them coaching websites. These are like weekend workshops and there's a lot of them out there. Some reputable, most not. But these guys, I've been to these events where these guys are saying this stuff at live events, and people are running to the back of the room with their credit cards to drop $20, $30, $40, $50,000 under these circumstances. You'll earn 8 to 25% government guaranteed. Guarantees in the government is death and taxes. That's all you get in life. So nothing is guaranteed. Yes, it is processed through the county level government, but they're not guaranteeing that you're going to get a great property when you foreclose. To turn $20,000 into $20 million in 1 year, I literally saw this on the website and heard it spoken at a live event, and I about fell out of my chair. It's not going to happen, folks. It's just not going to happen. And in some of these these conferences where you see these folks, they've baited the audience with their own staff who are telling these quote unquote experiences or stories of how they've done all this, and that's just to pump up the hype, if you will. So it doesn't happen. So when you go to one of these coaching program things, they tell you it's so easy. Oh, it's just so easy. You go to the courthouse, you buy this piece of paper, you kick back, you relax, money's just going to come flowing to you. Namaste. It's going to be fantastic. What it's really like, it's mass controlled chaos. That's the best way I can put it. Tax liens in our office account for 60% of our administrative costs, but only represent about 20% of our investments. So take that into consideration when you're looking at investing in tax liens. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of things to think about. There's a lot of things that need to be done. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, you're not going to just buy a piece of paper, kick back, and become a millionaire overnight. Okay, so let's talk about Florida. I've got the elephant in the room because Florida is like Texas. It seems to be one of those that everybody gravitates to, and Texas, I get it. They have ridiculous returns, but the competition makes those returns disappear very quickly. Florida is very much the same way. The sales are conducted usually in the spring. On this one, it was on or before June 1st where I extrapolated the data from one of the county websites. And the bidding is bid down on the interest rate. So if it's 18% is the maximum, then what you're doing is you're bidding down, and you're doing this online. You're bidding down to what the least amount you're willing to take for tax lien on that property. Now, what makes Florida really attractive is that they pay you a 5% penalty. So it's I'm going to call it a hybrid, but I don't want you to mix that up with Georgia, because we're going to call Georgia a hybrid too. 5% is a penalty. You're getting that next day, no matter what. If it redeems the next day, you're getting 5%. Plus 1.08% per month if you were able to acquire it at 18%. Now, the problem that we have with Florida is once Florida went online and all their auctions went online, Florida has where you would have had 50 bidders at an auction, a live auction. Now you could have 500. You could have 50,000. The computer software just randomly selects who gets the winning bid. So you literally are bidding 0.25% to 0% just to try and acquire that 5% penalty. And you better hope you get it in the first 3 months. Otherwise, that investment's really not going to look very attractive. If you can get it in the first 3 months, well, that's an annualized 20% return. That's pretty good. But again, the odds of you winning are slim to none. Florida also represents 30% of all tax liens sold nationally. That data came out from a tax lien mastermind group that we attended a few years ago. I don't know if that number still applies, but it sure is probably close. And 90% of all institutional tax buyers are in Florida. What does that mean for you? Well, as an individual, earning 3% on your money over the course of a year isn't going to work. For an institutional buyer, if they can get some 5s and some 3s and even some 2s, and they can spread that out through the volume, they can operate at that level. So what that essentially means, again, your bid rate is going to be less than 0.25%. Most of them are going at 0% now. If you're willing to accept such a low bid, your odds of winning are going to be less than 1 in 250 people. So you're wasting a lot of time trying to buy one individual or 10 individual tax liens in the state of Florida. So I say stay out of tax lien sales in Florida and explore tax deed sales. So now you say, well, wait a minute, hold on. If you buy a tax lien, you convert that into a tax deed. Yes, with the exception of Florida. Florida has a interesting setup. As the lien holder that you bought the lien, after 2 years has passed, you then have to pony up all the other delinquent taxes that are on the property, and you pony up some application fees. We call them tax deed applications, and all these other costs involved. They then go do all that judicial mumbo jumbo to notify the homeowner that there's going to be a secondary auction in Florida on your tax lien. So if you really wanted the property in Florida, after all that work you did to get your little 5%, now you have to go bid on your own property. So it's not automatically awarded to you. You have to go bid. So that's something to take in consideration. Now in Florida, I do think tax deed sales are great for individual investors. Why? Because again, 90% of institutional buyers are there. Most institutional buyers are there because they're leveraging capital through a bank. Because they're doing that, they can only take on so many properties, i.e. REO. So they want to offload that stuff as fast as they possibly can. So a tax deed sale is a great way to get in. An even better way to get in is to get in right before it goes to auction with the hedge fund. And we'll talk about that just for a second at the very end of this presentation. So let's talk Illinois. I've hit on it a couple of times. Great profits in Illinois, very convoluted state though. There's a lot involved. State, as always, any state regulates the amount of time a taxpayer has to redeem. In Illinois, that's 2 to 2.5 years. With PIP, we automatically extend that to 3 years. Why? Because our investors in Illinois, again, are redemption investors. They're interested in those liens redeeming. So if we give an extra 6 months, that's 6 months longer that the homeowner has to redeem those taxes. So that's how the process works. If you foreclose, it's very confusing, very convoluted, requires a lawyer, requires a lot of prove-up processes that we won't get into today, but there's a lot involved when you purchase Illinois tax liens. Again, we're talking about don't believe the hype. It's not that easy, but there is a lot of profits to it if you want to do it. In Illinois, the maximum bid rate is 18%. So again, like Florida, the way we bid is we bid down on the penalties. What's unique about Illinois is whatever that number is, it compounds every 6 months, i.e. it doubles every 6 months. So if we bought a lien for $1,000 and it's paying and we bought it at 18%. Okay, so the next day, if it's redeemed, the homeowner owes me $180 on that $1,000 tax lien that I purchased. If it's 6 months and a day, now they owe me $360 on that tax lien. If it's a year and 6 months, they owe me 54% or $540. So there's a lot of motivation for the homeowner to get in there and redeem early rather than later. So the max it can get up to is 108% after 30 months of your principal investment. And you know, a lot of the questions that come up at this point is well, you know, how many of them wait till the 108%? You would be shocked. It is you know, it's to this day, I don't know what plays through the minds of these folks, but a lot of them. If you watch one of our Illinois only presentations, we kind of highlight that fact and show you how many actually go. Now, this is a tax lien certificate. Not every state issues you a tax lien certificate. Illinois does, and they make it look pretty darn official. It's you know, it looks almost like a bond, and it gives you all the details that are involved. When it was sold, the property, the identification codes, how much it sold for, what interest rate we bought it for. On this one, it was 18%, so the max bid rate. And the property class, I can look at that property class and I know that is improved commercial property. And so that's what it looks like. So those are all purchased on behalf of our investors. They send those to us. And then what we do is when the redemptions come in, we process those certificates, send them back, and then back comes the checks. Touching on the why you can't be a successful tax buyer as an individual. In a state like Illinois, they have a tax sale registration, and the tax sale registration can be anywhere from $200 and $500. First and foremost, you have to do that 10 days before the actual sale. That's 10 business days. But more importantly, if you're not successful buying at that sale, you're not getting that registration fee back. So it's money lost. So that's just something to keep in mind. When you're doing something on volume like PIP does, we'll go to a lot of sales in Illinois, and we walk out of a lot of sales in Illinois, probably 50% of them. So if your fee is $250 and you're walking out of 50 sales because it's they're bidding at 0%, which does happen, you know, you're at a loss long before you even made your first purchase. So it's really hard to be an individual tax buyer in the state of Illinois. Touching on the, you know, the convoluted after the sale, there's a lot of legalese you have to do. There's certain notices you have to file. This is one of those notices. If this notice is not filed within 3 months of purchasing the tax lien, and you do not have this exact language as it is written out here, your tax lien is worthless. It can still be redeemed, but you now have no leverage for the next 2.5 years. There's no motivation for that homeowner to redeem that tax lien because you didn't file this legal notice. So you can't foreclose no matter what. So you're kind of stuck. So again, it's not that easy, but it's very profitable if you know what you're doing. I'm a visual guy, so I like to see numbers. I like to, you know, look at what people are telling me. This just shows you what a redemption report looks like. And as you can see, you know, 1975, 81, the amount of interest it earned, that's actually should be called penalty because it's not interest, it's a penalty. You know, so it shows you how that all plays out when the check was sent. You know, so you can see our turnaround on all of these is about 1 month from getting the redemption report to sending the certificates back to getting the check back. And sometimes they take longer, but you know, we process them pretty quickly in our office. This is the same thing. It's just another redemption report. This one shows that compounding. You can see the sale penalty was 8%. So that was multiplied times 5 periods or 5 6-month increments. And that's how you get that redemption total paid out there. So redemption reports come in all different shapes and sizes, but they all tell the same story. This one is from Will County, Joliet, Illinois, just south of Chicago. And as you can see on this one, we actually get the reports of a couple of hedge fund buyers in there as well, and there's us in the highlighted area there. So that's what Illinois looks like. As I said, out of 107 counties in Illinois, we invest in 97. The reason we're so successful in Illinois is because we can invest in more than any other individual can. We have the resources and the boots on the ground to be in 4 different places at once. So if we have a busted sale going on in 2 of 4 sales, well, that's fine because we're doing okay in the other 2. So that's why I say, you know, it's hard to be in this business as an individual. So again, just on more of the convoluted processes, we're not going to, you know, get deep into this. Illinois does make some wonky laws. Like I said, that first take notice has to be filed within, you know, I think it's 3 months and 10 days or something like that. As you can see in the petition filing, when we get close to having to foreclose, it has to be done between 5 and 3 months before the redemption period ends. So they put kind of these weird laws in place that you better be aware of. Otherwise, you know, it's not just buy, sit, wait for redemption and move forward. There's a lot more to it than that. At the end of the day, if you've done all your homework and you've done all things right and you've filed all your paperwork and you've gone through the court systems and you did the prove-ups, which is a lot of work involved as well, this is a tax deed you get, which is you know, they all kind of read the same way regardless of the state you're in. This happens to be one in Greene County, Illinois, a small county in Illinois, but that's what you get at the end of the day. So let's talk Georgia. Georgia hybrid liens. Why do we call them hybrid liens? Because they are a tax lien, but what you get when you go to the courthouse is actually a tax deed. So if you look on the left, you can see it says tax sale deed. You do hold a deed in your hands after you are the winning bidder at a Georgia sale. However, it acts like a certificate. That means you can't do anything with it. You cannot go knock on the door. You cannot harass the homeowners. You cannot go start cutting the grass and figuring out bid estimates for repairs. You cannot do anything with it until you foreclose the right to redeem in Georgia. So that's why we call it a hybrid. It is a lien, but what you're getting is a deed. It's just a deed you can't do anything with. Georgia's a pretty attractive state. It's a one-year redemption state. So now we're talking about property investors. These are the kind of states where if you're interested in owning property, Georgia would be a good one because it has a very short redemption period. Georgia tax sales also are very attractive because unlike Florida and Illinois, where we're talking about bidding down on interest, now we're talking about bidding up on the minimum bid. So essentially, if the minimum bid is offered at $5,000, the property, you went out and looked at the property, you say, yeah, yep, that's a $100,000 piece of property, no problem, I can see that all day. So you would say, all right, my max bid is going to be $60,000. That's the max I'm willing to pay for this property because I know it's valued at 100. I'm going to have to put 20 into it. So in order to make 20, blah, 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 blah. So the total cost to redeem is now $72,000 on a $5,000 tax bill. So that makes it very challenging for the homeowner to redeem that property. However, there is a loophole in that your bid is called an overbid. That overbid can be used to help pay the tax or to help redeem the property. So if we kind of slice that apart, the minimum bid is the original tax amount with penalties and fees, $5,000. The amount over the minimum bid is called a premium bid or an overbid. Both the minimum bid and the premium bid earn the full penalty amount, which is 20%. So even though it's $5,000 for the tax lien, if you paid $60,000 for it, they owe you a $12,000 penalty on top of that tax lien. So that's how you come up with the $72,000 redemption total. So it's $60,000, your total investment, plus the 20% penalty. Again, that's a penalty. It's not a proration. It's not an interest. It's paid if it's paid the next day, or 11 months and 29 days later is 20%. So that's how Georgia works. Now, before I jump to secondary market and over the counter, something about Georgia is Georgia is a cool play if you're more interested, for me, in the redemptive process. Yes, I said that Georgia is a good property owner state, but right now, things we're doing in Georgia, we're doing better in the flip side of it rather than the tax lien side of it. But if you are interested in the redemptive side, I really like Georgia right now because what you do then is your due diligence is specifically focused to those properties that have high mortgages on them. Now, these days, most of your tax payments are escrowed into your mortgage payment, but that's not always the case. So once you buy this lien or this hybrid lien, you reach out to the mortgage company and get it redeemed as quickly as possible and get that 20% as quickly as possible. So I do like that play about Georgia right now. Secondary market and over the counter. This one is short and sweet, real simple. Secondary market is properties, like I mentioned earlier, hedge funds that want to offload. They need to dump those before they get REO because that limits their buying power to buy more tax liens. Beautiful thing about secondary market, it's vetted. It's already had its due diligence. It's already gone through its risk assessment. It's already earning a considerable amount of interest. It's ready to foreclose if it hasn't already been engaged. And it can also often be purchased for less than the face value of the certificate. So if you buy it at, say, 50% of principal value, and let's say this was in Illinois, you bought it at 50% of principal value, and it was earning 108%. Well, now it's earning 216% if it redeems in foreclosure. So secondary market's great. Over the counter, no way. A lot of these coaching programs are talking about over the counter as being a great option for an individual investor. Keep in mind, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of tax buyers who have looked at them and struck them off as worthless. So what do you think that you know that they don't? I never understand the promotion of over-the-counter liens. It's almost as if you're just setting somebody up to fail. Never go buy an over-the-counter lien. I know there have been some people who have been successful in buying over-the-counter liens once or twice, but overall, it's a lost cause. It's just a bad idea in general. But there are a lot of folks that are promoting over-the-counter liens. I tell you, Don't do it. So let's talk about a secondary market tax lien for a second. This one was in Illinois, and again, I've stripped it from a different presentation, but this just gives you the hypothetical data, if you will, and at the time, if somebody were to purchase this, what it would have turned out to be. So it was earning 37.2% if it were to redeem in the next 3 months. This was actually at face value plus 12%. So all of that included, if you had bought this, you still would have been making 37% if it redeemed in the next 1 to 3 months. If you had total invested in this as a tax deed, if it had already gone through the entire foreclosure process, you would have been buying this little condo, which is valued at $28,000 for roughly $9,000. So that's secondary market tax liens. So there's a number of different places that you can find secondary market tax liens, but one thing I'll always say is you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and understand that opportunity is not necessarily going to be in your backyard. So when you're looking into these investments, that's definitely something to take into consideration. That's pretty much my pitch, if you will. That is just giving you an idea of it's not as easy as it seems to be, but there's a lot of profit involved if you can get there, or so you have somebody who can get you there. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of stress, but it is not easy, and that's the most important thing I want to get across. Some of the profits that they put out there, they are actual. We have seen them, $20 million and $20,000, absolutely not, obviously, but yes, we've seen astounding profits through the vehicle of tax lien investments, but it takes a lot of work, and you have to know that. With that, Will, I'll throw it back to you.
Thanks, Charles. Another great presentation as always. So I think we're going to open the floor to some questions. We have some building up here. I'll ask Charles questions about tax liens and all the stuff he talked about, and if there are any questions about self-directed IRAs, please throw them out, and I'll be happy to answer them as well. So, Charles, to start off, are you actively buying liens in these states, and what are the minimum investments?
Okay, so we're very active in Illinois. We're actually looking to double down this year because of everything that's going on. We're not active in Florida anymore because we're not a hedge fund buyer. We used to be very active before everything went online. In Georgia, as I explained, we are active in the redemptive side, but because our fix and flips in Georgia are outperforming the tax liens in Georgia, our focus has been more on that in Georgia. But Florida, no. Georgia, yes. Partially. Illinois, 200%.
Perfect. So another question, where can an investor get a list of secondary market tax liens to purchase, or even secondary market tax deeds?
Okay, so the best place, we have some on our website as well. We have a portal that doesn't just include ours, but some of the hedge funds that are out there as well, which is why you get a disclaimer that says PIP didn't necessarily buy these. But if anybody is interested in some of the other ones that I can't promote, if you will, on this broadcast, just shoot me an email and we'll point you in their direction.
All right, thank you for that. And another one, what are the risks associated to buying tax liens?
So this is the one that gets me. It's because I'll have a conversation with somebody and I'll go in depth with them, for 30 minutes about risk, because there is risk, and they'll look at me and they'll say, so it's virtually risk-free because because of the collateral property under it. To answer that question, yes. However, you have to buy right, which is something I always say, which means you have to understand what you're buying and what it's going to look like, using Illinois as an example, 3 years to 4 years from now. Is it going to still be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, or is it going to be, a gutted out shell? And did you buy right, taking that into consideration? So those are definitely risks. Another risk is that you can't predict who's going to redeem or who's not going to redeem. If you're in the redemptive play, then there's no way to micro process, if you will, the likelihood of redemption of one property versus the other. We do a lot behind the scenes to try to make those predictions, but at the end of the day, regardless of where you invest, you're going to have to consider foreclosure at some point during your experience.
All right, great answer. We have a bunch piling up now. So let's start. If I invested $50,000 in tax liens, how much should I have in reserve for the back end exit?
That's an awesome question. So if we're talking about Illinois, it could be 3 to 7 times your initial investment amount. That is the foreclosure of a property. And now I'm talking on a per lien basis. Okay, so you're gonna have a lot of liens, but let's say that you have one that it's $1,000. You bought it for $1,000, and now you're about to foreclose. So you got to have to consider you're going to have at least 3 years of taxes plus penalties that have been accruing on that as well, because you bought it and then you didn't buy it the next year, you didn't buy the next year, you didn't buy the next year. So that's how you can come up to 3 to 7 times. So you've got the taxes amounts involved, and you've got what we call the prove-up costs. And using Illinois as an example again, there's a lot of processes that are in the prove-up. We have to file with the courts. We have to get the sheriff to service the property. We have to retain the attorney. Well, the attorney is retained already, but you got to pay that cost. So that's how you get that 3 to 7 times on a particular lien. Now, I'm not saying if you have a $50,000 investment that you're going to have to come out of pocket $250,000 3 years from now. No, but if we're looking at a case-by-case basis, it could be 3 to 7 times that initial lien value.
Awesome. Very, very informative. Another question we have from an attendee: is it easier to be an individual buyer in other states, in your opinion?
No, there's guys that specialize in each state. We were trying to penetrate Mississippi for years, and we just couldn't ever make it come to light. It's really hard. You've got to be in multiple auctions because the seasoned guys, and I'll put myself in this category, the seasoned guys are sharks. When you go to these auctions and they see new blood, they're after you. So it takes a number of years to get into it. The reason I was so successful at it is because I was already doing it for somebody else, so I was already there. All I did was kind of slide in under my own company, so I was accepted into the club, if you will.
Awesome. How do people invest with PIP, with tax liens and deeds? And a lot of people have been asking this. Do you have a minimum amount of money or a minimum requirement to join?
So, great questions, big answer. So if you're investing with PIP, first of all, it's not a pooled investment, it's an individual investment, which is why you're on this call with us with Camaplan. So if you were working with Camaplan, essentially they are the owner of your investment. So all your investments would be Camaplan, Joe Smith, care of PIP Group. Minimum investments in Illinois are $75,000. Secondary market there are no minimum investments because it's secondary market. So essentially all we're doing is we're just conveying deeds around, if you will, and we're working with whoever is offloading that secondary market property and making our commissions off of them. So no minimum on that. If we're doing a fix and flip, that's $100,000 minimum. If we're doing that redemptive play in Georgia through the tax sales, it's $250,000 minimum. I know that's a big one, but there's a ton of administrative work ahead of it that we have to do in order to make it realize the profits that make it worth the time.
Perfect. Thanks, Charles. And I just want to backtrack to something you said about owning it in a self-directed IRA. Camaplan will not own that asset. It's your IRA, which is a separate entity from Camaplan. We're just the administrator. So your IRA would actually own it as Camaplan administrator, FBO, your name, IRA, just like Charles said, but not Camaplan, the company. Another question, do you have to be accredited to invest with you?
No.
Okay, great answer.
I'll be honest with you. I prefer non-accredited investors.
Hey, That's even better. More people are open to it.
Yep.
We have a question. Somebody's asking, how has COVID-19 impacted your business?
So that's an awesome question. So it definitely hurt us in the March-April timeframe. People were just panicking and withdrawing from commitments, and it really shut us down, essentially, just like the rest of the country. But as we're kind of coming out the other side, people are recognizing that we're in a position and we're in trenches that cater to what the economy is getting ready to do. And we've been in the trenches from the last bad economy, the good economy, and what's going to come down the pipeline. Regardless of what your opinion is, there's going to be more inventory of tax liens, more inventory of foreclosures, more inventory of fix and flips. And we're already in the trenches and have been there. COVID-19 certainly hit us hard, but our business, I would be surprised if we do not double in growth again as we did after the last recession for the next 3 years. Once a year for the next 3 years. So essentially a growth of 300% over the next 3 years.
All right, just rattling them off. I'm bouncing around between some of the questions that maybe are less pointed than some others, but have a lot of educational value. But I'll try to get to as many as possible. If not, you can contact Charles from his contact information there, or if it's about self-directed IRAs, you can always contact me or Camaplan directly. We'd be happy to answer them. We got another one right here. Is there any way to contact the owner and get them to do a quit claim instead of waiting for the 3 years?
There is. What we do, the state of Illinois actually does it now too, but we pioneered it and they challenged us on it. We do what we call payment plans. That's a lot of money for them to have to come up with. A lot of these folks, they're on limited income, and so making that payment, whether it's $5,000 or even whether it's even $1,000, is detrimental. So what we do is we do payment plans. We let them pay over time. Now, I know that's not the answer to your question. Can you reach out to them and quit claim it? Yes, you can also do that. But what we have found with most of these folks is that they're proud and they just got kind of turned around. A lot of times we do quick claims, but a lot of times they take kind of offense to that, if you will. They may have been there for 3, 4, 5 generations, and they want to keep the property. So we'll set up payment plans, and then if we do have to foreclose, because you still have to protect your interest, then we'll do contracts for deed. It escalates the payment, but you still keep them in the home. You're still making your profits, and then you just essentially offload it out after 2 years of clean payments to a traditional mortgage financier or another type of private lender.
Wow. Personally, that sounded like a very clever answer. Obviously, I can't give any advice. Another question, how do you work with investors and what services do you provide to enable them to buy these? They say it sounds complicated and it may be in another state from where the investor is.
Yep. Okay. So what we are is we define ourselves as a servicing agent. So we do all of this on your behalf. We don't do it in Florida, and we do it where we're performing the best. So right now that is in Georgia and in Illinois. So as a service provider, essentially we are turnkey. You don't have to do anything. The transparency is there. Everything is recorded in your name or the Camaplan IRA, however it's set up. So it's all yours. It's 100% yours. The way we earn our fees is based on the performance of your investment. So you essentially sign an agency agreement with PIP. We like to have an interview with every single oncoming potential prospect. The purpose of that is every investor is different. I don't care what your exit strategy is. Every investor is different, and we want to know if tax liens is right for you. You know, the unknowing of when something's going to redeem, and you know, being stressed about just our average predictability versus what's actually happening. So every potential prospect, we have at least a 30-minute phone conversation, and we go through, okay, this is how tax liens work. This is how fix and flips work. This is how secondary market works. And then we'll essentially guide you into what we think is going to fit you best. And then you're off to the races. You become an investor. Each investor is prioritized on a first come, first served basis. That is regardless of the size of your account. That's how we've done it since the day I started. I never wanted to prioritize the $500,000 investor over the $50,000 investor. And that's what's worked for us. So that's essentially how you become an investor.
Thanks, Charles. I think this is going to be our last question because we're closing in on 4, but obviously, again, I'll say it again, contact me or Charles with any of your questions. We want all the questions answered that we can. So this is a good question. In recent experience, have you seen the hedge funds backing off from purchasing tax liens?
You know, it is a wild roller coaster, and that's an awesome question. No, what happens? Hedge funds have about a 6-year life cycle, and the reason for that is their margins are so thin and so tight that you know, they tend to buy themselves out of business, if you will. The other issue is that hedge funds are usually paid on the placement of capital, not the performance of it. That's not for all hedge funds, but that's for a lot of them. So you know, they're just there to spend the money, and you know, there'll be one that'll pop up that you know they're brand new and they're buying everything at zero, and you just walk out of that sale and say, okay, you know, they are focused on volume. I'm going to go down the road 100 miles to, you know, a populace that is far less where I know they aren't going to be, and I'm going to go spend some money there. So no, the hedge funds will, especially in this time, in this crisis, there'll probably be more of them, but there's also going to be more inventory. So the patterns and the trends shouldn't change.
Thank you, Charles. And I want to thank you again for putting on such a educational and informative presentation. I want to thank everybody for joining on behalf of myself and Camaplan. And Charles, do you have any statements that you would like to leave the people off on before we end the presentation?
No, absolutely. I thank you for everybody for attending. It looks like everybody pretty much stayed the entire time. I really appreciate that. I see there's a lot of questions that are left over. If you have any, by all means, that's my personal email there. Shoot them to me. I'm very active in the business, so I'm actually going to be doing site inspections in Savannah all day tomorrow. So if I don't get back to you right away, I will get back to you. And best way to get me is email, because I never know where I'm going to be from one minute to the next.
All right, perfect. Everybody have a great afternoon, and feel free to reach out to us.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles.
Bye.